Aloha and welcome to Building Relationships in 9 Easy Steps with GLASSVASE. My name is Donna Fisher and I am an 8th grade English Language Arts teacher and English department head at Kapolei Middle School. My team includes CJ Hill, Nicole Dow, Jin Chang, Lorena, Jose, Virginia Wenderhurst, Brenda Chase, and Sally Roberts. According to John Hattie, founder of Visible Learning, teacher-student relationships have an effect size of 0.72. 0.4 is 1 year's growth. So this is almost 2 years growth. If we want students to read, write, communicate, and think at high levels, we have to develop positive, trusting relationships with all students. That's also according to Hattie. So if you would like to follow along with the activities sheet, all you have to do is follow this QR code, and the activity sheet you can print it out and write along with us. All right, so, and this is a bigger version of that same QR code. Activity 1. Because for activity 1, please get out your activity paper and take a moment to think about and jot down your response to the prompt. Our relationship with students is like a glass vase because. Okay, so think about that for a moment. Our relationship with students is like a glass vase because. All right, thank you for those touching ideas. When I asked other sessions, here are some of the responses that I received. A student's relationship is like a glass vase because it is transparent, fragile, beautiful. It can be broken. If it is broken, it is hard to repair, and it will never be the same. It is long-lasting and something to cherish. As teachers, we are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we know for students to learn, students must first have their physiological needs met, food, water, clothing, shelter, sleep, followed by a need to feel safe. The third tier of need, making our students feel loved and a sense of belonging, is the foundation of today's session. Our team's vision is to develop an enthusiastic community that promotes diversity and inclusiveness, where everyone feels acknowledged, accepted, valued, and a deep sense of belonging. The mission of our team is to ensure the social and academic well-being and growth of every child by creating safe, positive, welcoming, student-centered learning environments built on relationships and trust that fosters student success. Jin is now going to lead us in our second activity. Well, Jin's not here, so I will lead you in your second activity. So at this time, please describe your favorite teacher. So take a few moments. You can jot this down on a piece of paper and describe when you were in school your favorite teacher. All right, if you're attempting to duplicate this same activity and these activities with your school, at this time would be a good time for people to pause and do a lesson in active listening. So you'll have Two people pair off, one's the speaker, one's the listener, and they will have 1 minute to share about their favorite teacher, and then they'll switch roles and the other person will have 1 minute to share. And the point of it is to listen to understand and not to interrupt, as well as leaning in, nodding your head, and asking clarifying questions like, I understand that, or tell me more about. All right, and then after you have shared with one another and you've experienced this listening to understand and not to interrupt, then we would come back together and I would thank Jen for his activity. So I asked my students to describe the characteristics of teachers that they found most important for building a relationship with students. The students were asked to do this by completing the statement, my favorite teacher. Here are some of the responses. The action verbs included listens, helps, engages, answers, encourages, acknowledges, etc. The students also included the characteristics of being fun, comforting, organized, caring, honest, understanding, respectful, sweet, relatable, welcoming, empathetic, and sympathetic. This exercise, along with research and professional development, led to the creation of our vision, mission, and ultimately led to our research-based best practices of GLASSVASE to greet, listen, acknowledge, smile, make it student-centered, value, acceptance, success, and environment. And also in your packet, there is a note sheet if you're interested in that. So the first letter in GLASSVASE is G for greet. It is very important for people, teachers, to take the time to greet their students and for people to greet people when they walk in. So anytime someone comes into your home, you would greet them at the door, and the same goes for your classroom. So according to First Days of School by Harry Wong, teachers should never be too busy to stop what they're doing and greet their students at the door. We have found that our students feel important and welcome when we take the time to greet them. This also gives us time to do an assessment on their well-being. I just want to tell you a little bit about the next author that I'm going to quote. Rusty Komori, Punahou School varsity tennis team coach, set a national record by winning 22 consecutive state championships, the longest high school streak in the history of the United States in all sports. So Rusty Komori is the author of Beyond the Game, Coaching for Peak Performance in Business, Sports, and Life. In my doctorate program, we actually spent 10 weeks studying both of his two books that he wrote so that we could be better leaders. So in Rusty Komori's book, he talks about the importance of getting the pulse and vibe from students, well, for his team members. And we do this by reading student body language and their tone. For example, when the students return from recess, they're normally excited. However, when they return from lunch, sometimes they're sluggish. More importantly, though, than how they usually are, is how they usually aren't. And that's the important piece, is a teacher should be able to pay attention to when a student is acting off, not quite themselves. And that should alert the teacher that they need to touch base with that student sometime during the class to find out what's going on. Therefore, greeting the student at the door is actually a tool. It helps you to be able to assess the well-being and readiness for class. So here's an example of a teacher, Miss Wendhurst, greeting her students.
All right, thank you for coming in today. I need you to go to the back of the line and take off your hoodie, please. Thank you. Good to see you today. Please put your phone in your pocket. Thank you. Good to see you. Please put your hoodie up to your uniform and your head. Thank you for coming in. Good to see you today. Thank you for putting your phone away. We're doing grammar number 7. Good to see you. Please put your lanyard on. the next book that we can have. Thank you so much. Thank you for fixing the uniform. I'll see you in there.
So as you can see in this video, that Virginia is not negatively correcting them or scolding them. She's greeting them. If a student is out of dress code, she doesn't get angry or upset. This is a time for greeting, not for admonishing. Instead, she nicely asks them to please put on their ID, or please take out their AirPod, or please put away their phone. And each time you hear her say thank you as they do this. So she doesn't deny them entry. She wants them to feel welcome, not unwelcome. So being polite when redirecting a student with a please and a thank you will go a long way to building relationships. I remember a few years ago in one of my classes, we had an EDD student, and he was sitting on my air conditioner. So I asked everybody to stand in the back of the room. They were all standing, getting ready for something, and there he went, plop, sat right down on top of the air conditioner where you're not supposed to put books or anything, and he's sitting on it. And I said, "Get off the air conditioner." And he looked at me and he said, "Please." And I have never forgotten that lesson that that student taught me. How much more polite would it have been had I said, "Please get off the air conditioner"? Instead, I was being aggressive and negative, and that does not build relationships. I did apologize to him, and I have not forgotten to try to use the word please when I am asking someone to do it, and to use a sweet voice instead of a demanding voice. I was in the Army, so sometimes I do have a little bit of military in me. Okay, so the second letter is L for listening. As author John Crownapple, author of Culture of Dignity, Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity, he consulted with us and he taught us, just like you did earlier, to listen, to understand, and not to interrupt. It's especially important that teachers become experts at active listening. Active listening involves mindfulness and being truly present and in the moment. It includes nodding your head, leaning in toward the speaker, and opening your mind to understand what they are saying. You simply cannot build a relationship without trust. And students will not trust you or believe you care if you do not take the time to listen to them. Author Kyle Schwartz wrote the book, "I Wish My Teacher Knew: How One Question Can Change Everything for Kids." Here's the book right here. It's a nice hardback book, and it is a wonderful book. I recommend that you get this and read it so you understand what this exercise is about and why it was created. So, we listen to our students to understand them, to empathize with them, and to support them. Please listen with your hearts, as these are the responses we received this year. Some of them. Every year we ask our students to complete the phrase, "I wish my teachers knew." These are some of the responses that we received this year. "I wish my teachers knew what it's like being me. I wake up with no motivation, and I go to school to friends that make me feel invisible, but I walk around like I'm just fine, and yet no one notices me. I wish my teachers knew how on some days it feels like I'm struggling to keep my head above water. I wish my teachers knew that I feel like something's wrong with me. I wish my teachers knew that I rarely see my dad because he is a traveling nurse, and that I have after-school sports for over 3 hours per day. I don't get home till late, and sometimes I have to stay up past 12 midnight doing homework, studying, and helping my mom. I wish my teachers knew comparing me to other students to make me do better in class does nothing but make me feel like a failure. I wish my teachers knew that I have low self-esteem and that I don't believe in myself. I wish my teachers knew that I think about what my parents might feel every day when I'm on either my dad's side or my mom's side of the family. I wish my teachers knew that both my parents did meth, and now I live with my grandparents. I wish my teachers knew that I sometimes slack off and do bad things because of what I went through as a kid. I wish my teachers knew why I don't open up to you. How am I supposed to trust you and listen to you when you can't trust and listen to me? I wish my teachers knew that my dad is almost never home to take care of me, so I have to take care of myself. I wish he was home earlier to feed me and to at least spend time with me. I wish my teachers knew my parents are constantly stressed and yelling and that I don't go to sleep until late. I wish my teachers knew that we don't have much food at home, so I'm always hungry during class and it messes with my learning. Knowing is important, but it's not enough. What you do with that knowledge is even more critical. It's not enough to listen to understand. We must also acknowledge, validate, investigate our students' wishes. Empathy is important, but it's not enough. We need to get students the appropriate support they need. One way to do this is, after receiving the responses, type them into a document and share them with your vice principal and your counselors and your team. Then think outside of the box. What do the students need? Each year, the students' needs will change. For example, this year, our team lead, she began a support group for students who she had identified as being stressed or anxiety. So they meet twice a week. Another important thing about acknowledgement is being able to acknowledge when you are wrong. So raise your hand if you've ever been wrong. I have, that's for sure. And my students always catch me when I'm wrong, and the first thing I do is admit it and love the fact that they were able to correct me, and it helps me to know that they're learning through my example how to be humble, how to be honest, how to have integrity, how to be reliable and trustworthy. It's okay to be wrong. Rita Pierson, in her famous TED Talk, "Every Child Deserves a Champion," purposefully emphasized every child. And in her TED Talk, she wants us to realize that it's not just some children or most children, but it's every child. And in all of our classes, we all have those quiet, introverted students that just don't necessarily stand out. Those are what I call the invisible child. And we really need to work on not having invisible students. We need to acknowledge all students, and especially the introverts and the students who are invisible. So one activity that really will help you shed light on your ability to recognize your own students is for you to, right now you could just jot down a list of 5 students. And then next to that list, I want you to put a little check mark if you can recognize them by face. Could you recognize them academically? And do you know anything about them personally? So put those little checks. Now, when you have finished this exercise, go ahead and come back to this lesson. All right, so that exercise is something that would be phenomenal for you to do with your team or individually. What you do is you take a list of all of your students and you have 3 columns next to it, and you identify from every single student, can you recognize them by face? Do you know them academically, and do you know anything personally about them? It is such a telling list. What we would do as a team is we would write it down and give everybody a different color marker, and then each team member would put the dots next to it, and it just alerts us all to the student who most people didn't know, who didn't recognize. That makes it easy for us to then identify and alert us to those less visible students. It identifies the introverts and quiet students that need to be acknowledged. It can also motivate teachers to get to know all of their students so that the next time they can put the checks. I hope that you try that. It really is a wonderful thing. So one other thing that I use in my classroom to acknowledge one another and to acknowledge students are clappers. And these hand clappers, I have the students use hand clappers for two reasons. One, so that everybody gets applause. Because the students like to clap them, they clap them for everyone. They don't just clap them for the popular kids. Sometimes when it comes to clapping, students get very self-conscious about, oh, am I clapping too loud? Oh, I don't want to clap for that person. Oh, are people looking at me? When you give them a clapper, it takes away all that anxiety and they just have fun clapping. Here's an example from my class. This is with a student teacher in my class, and she's asking them to, you'll hear.
Awesome, thank you. Practice being grateful.
All right, so that is just an example, a quick, short example of how the clappers are. Another thing that our team lead is so great at, and that's CJ Hill, is she's really great at recognizing birthdays. And she recognizes all the teachers' birthdays as well as all the students' birthdays. And on a really neat, positive note, if you're someone like me who's like, oh, I want to recognize all their birthdays, but I forget when all their birthdays are, and I don't really have a tracking system, well, as Panorama would have it, they have now fixed that for us. So in our Panorama data, look right here, this says birthdays. So watch this quick little video of how it clicks on the birthdays and then lists everybody from today forward. Watch this, it's so neat. So you go to birthdays, click on it. And then there it was, from today, and then it goes forward, everybody else. So then you know all the students on your team who's having a birthday. It's just really a fabulous thing. And it is important to recognize everybody's birthday because it's a special day for them. Okay, in addition to recognizing, acknowledging people's birthdays, then the next letter in our glass vase is S for smile. And many of you have seen Ron Gutman's TED Talk on smiling, the importance of smiling, but in case you haven't, here's a quick Cliff Note version of it.
Of the most basic biologically uniform expressions of all humans. At UC Berkeley, 30-year longitudinal study examined the photos of students in an old yearbook and tried to measure their success and well-being throughout their life. By measuring the students' smiles, researchers were able to predict how fulfilling and long-lasting a subject marriage will be, how well she would score in standardized tests of well-being, and how inspiring she would be to others. In another yearbook, I stumbled upon Barack Obama's picture. When I first saw his picture, I thought that his superpowers came from his super collar. But now I know it was all in his smile. A 2010 Wayne State University research project looked into pre-1950s baseball cards of major league players. The researchers found that the span of a player's smile could actually predict the span of his life. Players who didn't smile in their pictures lived an average of only 72.9 years, where players with beaming smile lived an average of almost 80 years. The good news is that we're actually born smiling. Using 3D ultrasound technology, we can now see that developing babies appear to smile even in the womb. When they're born, babies continue to smile, initially mostly in their sleep, and even blind babies smile to the sound of the human voice. Have you ever wondered why being around children who smile so frequently make you smile very often? A recent study at Uppsala University in Sweden found that it's very difficult to frown when looking at someone who smiles. You ask why? because smiling is evolutionarily contagious and it suppresses the control we usually have on our facial muscles. Mimicking a smile and experiencing it physically help us understand whether a smile is fake or real, so we can understand the emotional state of the smiler. Smiling stimulates our brain reward mechanism in a way that even chocolate, a well-regarded pleasure inducer, cannot match. British researchers found that one smile can generate the same level of brain stimulation as up to 2,000 bars of chocolate. And unlike lots of chocolate, lots of smiling can actually make you healthier. Smiling can help reduce the level of stress-enhancing hormones like cortisol, adrenaline, and dopamine, increase the level of mood-enhancing hormones like endorphin, and reduce overall blood pressure. And if that's not enough, smiling can actually make you look good in the eyes of others. A recent study at Penn State University found that when you smile, you don't only appear to be more likable and courteous, but you actually appear to be more competent. So whenever you want to look great and competent, reduce your stress, or improve your marriage, or feel as if you just had a whole stack of high-quality chocolate without incurring the caloric cost, or whenever you want to tap into a superpower that will help you and everyone around you live a longer, healthier, happier life, smile.
So to recap, then, smiling makes us approachable, relieves stress, elevates our mood. Smiling is contagious. Smiling helps us build better relationships. When we smile, we are perceived as being likable, courteous, and competent. Smiling creates stronger, healthier social bonds and helps us live a longer, healthier, happier life. And one other thing, so because I knew all the gifts of smiling, right, these positive hormones that we receive from it and the negative hormones that are released, I consider when I smile at someone that I'm giving them a gift. So those people who don't smile back that I see on campus, I call it wearing them down with a smile. I'm going to continue to smile and say hi to them every day until I wear them down. And you know what? Before the end of the first semester, those same people who were rolling their eyes or looking at me sideways are all smiling back and waving and saying, "Hi, Donna," when they see me. So it does work. It absolutely works. So wear them down with a smile. And for sure, smile at your students. You may be the only friendly face they see all day. All right. So, according to Piaget, Vygotsky, and Dewey, the constructivist learning theory emphasizes the learner's critical role in constructing meaning from new information and prior experience. So now we're looking at student-centered. That's our next S, our second S. So we had smiling, and now we have student-centered. So it's important to understand that student-centered learning and students' interests being put first is central to the learning experience. The students cannot learn without being engaged and interested in what they're learning. Therefore, it's important for us to give student voice and student choice. So, for example, when you're going to a conference, how great is it when you get to pick which session you're going to attend instead of having to go to the one that you're being told to go to? The students feel the same way. That's why if we are giving them choices in how they are demonstrating their knowledge to us, like what they're going to write about or read about, then they're more engaged. So student-centered, student voice and student choice. So as you recall, earlier I talked about how I created GLASSVASE using student input for what they found to be the characteristics that were most important for building relationships. And lo and behold, 56% of the students included some form of student-centered with engaging, fun, and here you can see it right here. So the students have spoken. They want student-centered learning. All right, so a famous quote by Maya Angelou, and most of you have all heard this, is, "I've learned people will forget what you said. People will forget what you do, but people will never forget how you made them feel. People will never forget how you made them feel. So our next letter is V for value. We want everyone to feel valuable. You cannot put a price tag on making someone feel valued. In a lot of our classrooms, we do this and we may not be aware of it. So in one of the classrooms, for me, for example, I created something called an appreciation parking lot, where I wanted students to make other students feel valued. So what they do is they have a little 3x3 sticker and a magnet, and I made a little parking lot with spaces and everything to park, and I put a little bus over here, and the students put Post-it notes for each other about what they appreciate about each other. Also, you can see here we have a board in our admin building where teachers give each other appreciation notes. This helps them to feel valued. In another building, we have a shaka wall in an 8th grade building where there's actually shaka hands, and you put what you appreciate about someone else on there to help them feel valued. And in one of my classes, or a couple years ago, one of the things that I ended every class with was appreciation shout outs. So we couldn't leave our class until we had at least 3 specific positive praise for someone else in the room. So it couldn't just be, I like your shoes. It had to be something specific that they did that we appreciate about them. I also heard in one of the other classes where the teacher has a note that she has every student in the room write what they appreciate about this other person. And then she gives that note to everybody at the, I don't know if it was on their birthday or at the end of the school year, but it was just a beautiful idea. And she certainly looks through all of them to make sure they're very positive and purposeful. So I would say that every one of us has the potential to figure out in our own classrooms, how can we make students make each other feel valued? You are an innovator, you are creative, you already know that, or you want to be a teacher. So take a few minutes to think, what time do I have during my classroom time that we could make each other feel valued? Or what space do I have in my room where I can create a space to make the students feel valued? So go ahead and take a moment to write that down. Your if-then. If you want students to feel valued by one another, then you could. What could you do? All right. So the next letter in GLASSVASE is the A for acceptance. So as you recall from Maslow's hierarchy of need, we know that for students to learn, students must first have their physiological needs met, followed by a need to feel safe, and then today's third tier of a need to feel loved and a sense of belonging. Acceptance is very difficult, but essential at the middle school age. Therefore, we emphasize social acceptance. We do this in our advisories, in our classes, and what we do is we teach these social emotional learning skills such as empathy for one another, perspective taking, appreciating diversity, and respecting others. So these are all skills that we teach, specific skills that we teach our students, either in advisory or during our classes. Acceptance, as you know, is important because we need to know that we are accepted just the way we are. We need unconditional acceptance of others. And we need to know that that is the key to a happy relationship. So in our team, we certainly want everybody to feel that we accept you as you are. You do not need to change. All right, so now we're going to do activity 4. So if you could, on a piece of paper, just jot down, draw a house. You're going to have 2 minutes to draw this house, and you are being graded on the house. you're going to be graded on creativity, symmetry, functionality, and detail. So go ahead and draw your house. You have 2 minutes. All right, so now that you have drawn your house, what we're going to do is you are going to grade your house on the following criteria. So your criteria is right here. Okay, so give yourself 2 points if you put a chimney on the left side when you're looking at the picture. 2 points if you put a circle window, that shows creativity. 2 points if you put gutters in a drain pipe, shows detail. Give yourself 2 points if you put shutters on both sides of square windows only, that shows symmetry. 2 points if you put a garage, that shows detail and functionality. Put 2 points for front doors, double French doors, because that shows detail. And subtract 8 points for any bushes, shrubs, flowers, or sidewalk. This shows that you were not following directions. You were asked to draw a house, not a yard. Okay, so go ahead and total those points up and then circle over here what your score is. All right, so if you scored 11 to 12 points, raise your hand. Those are my superstars. All right, great job. Thank you for doing your best. Everybody else, you need to try harder next time. So how did that make you feel? How did not having teacher clarity affect your motivation? Did it violate your belief that your success is important and possible? Did it make you trust Jen less? Well, Jen was the guy doing the rubric, by the way. Did it negatively impact your relationship with the grader? So our third S is success. To build close relationships with students, which again has a Hattie effect size of 0.72, students need to not only believe they can succeed, they also need to know that you believe they can succeed. And you need to set them up for success with teacher clarity in the form of exemplars, rubrics, modeling, scaffolding, etc. According to John Hattie, teacher clarity has an effect size of 0.75. That is almost 2 years growth. Additionally, according to best practices by Hattie, students need to have learning intentions, kamaka'o, and success criteria, kekolokolo hamana, which yields an impressive effect size of 0.92, which is over 2 years growth. So one of the ways that I help students be successful in my classroom is by having a readiness tracker, where the students will indicate with these small paper, with these small clothespins, they'll put their So on these little wooden clothespins, the students put their initials, and then these are by class periods. So they go across like this by class periods. I have these 5 different class periods, and the students indicate with their clothespins how they feel about their ability, their readiness to write, in this case, a narrative. I do change this to the different types of writing throughout the school year, and the students can move their clips anywhere that they want based on their formative learning as they're going through. So the students might originally feel that they are a level 1, I need help getting started. A level 2, I can do this, but I have questions, and then they can move to a level 3 where I can do this easily, or level 4, I am an expert at this. So that's what this readiness tracker does for me. Additionally, I have an indicator, and these indicators are on every desk. And the beauty of this indicator is not only does it help keep me to know where every student is throughout the entire class period by the changing of this bottom piece. So I tape it to the desk like this, and then the students can turn the bottom piece where I'll say, when you are finished with X, turn your indicator to blue facing Fisher. Then they turn it to blue facing Fisher. When you're ready to move on, turn it to green facing Fisher. It's also beautiful to watch as the whole room becomes blue, 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 blue. Oh, they're all ready. Now you know every single one. You might see that one student is still not on blue yet. So then I ask the students to help one another. If you see someone next to you who is still on blue, please help them. And then it's so beautiful when the students reach over and they help them do whatever it is that they're trying to do. And then you see that student's thing turn and you're like, yes, students helping students, that is perfect. But this indicator is even more wonderful than that. So I originally did not devise this so that it would indicate to me when a student was ready to move on. That was just a perk because I needed somewhere to put my clips. What it began with was I wanted some way for me to know the learning intentions and success criteria where every student in the classroom is, what questions they have, at what stage throughout my class period. So my success criteria is usually listed in order of the skills that the students are going to be asked to do throughout the class period. And the students, as we go through our success criteria, our Kapolei Hamana 1, we will look at it and the students will indicate how they feel about their ability to be successful. So let's say, for example, of using a rhetorical statement to introduce your introduction paragraph. Oh, they might say, rhetorical, what is that? I don't even know what that is. So they might put pink at the top. So the colors indicate their ability to do it. Green clip, I completely understand. Yellow clip, I have some questions. Or pink clip, I need help before I can start. So when you, as the teacher, look out and you see the student and they have all green clips but that one pink clip, then you know that that student is going to need help on whatever success criteria 1 was and whatever success criteria 3 is. Because here you can see now I have 2 pink clips on here. So this is such a powerful tool because it allows you to know where every student is throughout the class period based on that success criteria. So you can provide them for timely, appropriate support at the exact right moment. Okay, so I love this indicator, and in my classroom it is an absolute must. All right, and it does, the students always feel like that I know where they're at. The last letter is E for environment. All of the middle school classroom environments need to be safe, positive, and welcoming. They need to be student-centered, and they need to be built on relationships and on trust. And they need to foster student success. In order to have an environment like that, I remember during one of my evaluations, my vice principal was in there and she watched everything that I did. And she said, Donna, I love what you're doing. I love your room. I love everything about this, but I just don't see the students in your room. Where are the students? and I had my great posters that I had made, and I had everything else, but I didn't have anything about students. So I went back and I thought, how can I make this room represent the students? Because it's sometimes hard when you have different periods coming through all day long. It's not like an elementary school classroom. So I thought outside of the box, and here are some of the ways that I came up with it. And at the same time, it was identifying things that I wanted the students to do anyway. So one is this student-created growth mindset. So all the students either look around the room and find a quote that they like, they look online and find a quote that they like that's a growth mindset quote, or they create one themselves, which is so beautiful when they create them themselves. And this tree is actually taller than I am, as you can see here. I'm 5'6" when I wear my high heels, which is every day. So this tree is even taller than that. And all of my beautiful students' hands are adorned on that tree. Additionally, on my breakout room door, I have all of the students have their goals. So they do a goal for reading, writing, and on the SBA. So that's posted here. And lastly, to create this environment where students feel safe, one of the biggest things that a teacher needs to do is to make sure that they admonish in private and praise in public. I personally prefer just never to admonish the students. I think that there's nothing to benefit from somebody ever yelling at you, and that there's much better ways to handle situations when it comes to students. One of the ways that I do this is something that I call a focus on learning. And I created this using Sherry Takeda, our behavioral specialist. She came over after I had gone through this course and I had created this refocus process, and she helped me to tweak it for our demographic of students. And we came up with that we needed to have 5 reminder slips, rather than calling them warning slips, reminder slips for having appropriate behavior. So the students, what happens is, instead of correcting a student for any inappropriate behavior, let's say they have their head down, or they're sleeping in class, or they're talking when they're not supposed to be talking, you just walk over and you don't say anything to them. You just hand them a slip, you set it on the table next to them, and they look at it and they read the slip, and it says, first reminder, I need to use my strategies and choose to focus on learning. So once the student has received this slip, then nothing negative is happening to them right now. They just have to self-assess and figure out what they're doing wrong and fix it. If, however, during the same class period, the student continues with either the same or different off-task or inappropriate behavior, they get a second reminder slip. And that second reminder slip says, second reminder, last warning, I need to stop and make better choices, or else I will lose recess time. So now the student, still nothing negative has happened. The student has now, usually it never gets past these yellows. Right there, the student just corrects their own behavior. And then as the students asked me, Miss Fisher, could you please create another slip that tells us that you noticed when we did change our behavior? It's like, sure. So I made a green slip that says, I am focused on learning, I'm doing great, and I'm making good choices. I'm looking, listening, and participating. My teacher recognizes my effort. So this does not negate their other two slips that they received, or their other slips, but it does tell them that I did notice they changed their behavior, and that does help them. If, however, the student now needs a third reminder. The third reminder is the first time that anything has now happened. And the student's third reminder, consequence number 1, due to my choices, I have lost recess time. I need to focus on learning, or else the teacher will call my parents. So no parents have been called as of now, but they have lost, and I only take 4 minutes from the recess. I don't take their whole recess. And then if they continue with off-task or inappropriate behavior, past that, the fourth reminder, now when they're on the fourth reminder, they get consequence number 2. Not only are their parents going to be called, but now they're also going to fill out this refocus form. Or I changed it to focus on learning form. The focus on learning form is going to ask them pretty much 3 questions. What were they doing that was inappropriate? Why were they doing it? Because a lot of people like to plead their case, right? And then how does it negatively impact them and their and other students in the classroom? So once they filled that form out, and I have it both in bit.ly format as well as on paper format, the students will usually, they're going to behave after that because they've now reflected on it. Their parents have been called, they've lost recess time. If, however, something does happen where they don't, then their fifth and final form would be that they would be sent to the counselor or to the vice principal, and they would fill out that refocus form again, or focus on learning form again, with the same questions. Plus, when they do call their parents, I do have a script that I call the parents, but once the parents are on the phone and I put the child on to talk to them, there's a script that they read to their parents. And all of this I have put in here for you. If you click on this link, once you're in this PowerPoint, and you can go to all of those forms in here. So focus on learning, here's the learning slips, here's the phone script, this is the bit.ly link to it, and here's the indicators if you're interested in those, and here are the paper slips, and you just print them on different color paper. Okay, so this. The last thing in your healthy environment is to be physically safe, emotionally safe, and virtually safe. To be physically safe is very easy, and it's all dependent on the teacher. You need to have a relationship with students where they know that no one touches one another, period. You need to be organized, and your classroom needs to be clean and orderly so that no one gets hurt while they're in your classroom. If you ever have a spill on the floor or something like that, then you call on the phone and have the custodian come over to fix it, and you make an area around it to keep the students physically safe. As far as emotionally safe, again, admonish in private, praise in public, and your classroom needs to be an area where there are no put downs are allowed. No bad language is allowed. No snickering at one another is allowed. So as long as everybody understands that, and those are the norms, that will be much better. And you can also have a virtually safe classroom by having something like GoGuardian, where you can see everybody's computer, being aware of what students are typing. If they are texting to one another on the GoGuardian, you can be reading that, enlarging that to see what it's saying. Or our school, we're fortunate to have an SSS, student support specialist, and what she does is she checks on their emails and makes sure that everything is positive. Or she suspends their account. Plus, we have a no cell phones during school, and that helps. All right, so lastly, our vision was to develop an enthusiastic community that promotes diversity and inclusiveness, where everyone feels acknowledged, accepted, valued, and a deep sense of belonging. And this is possible when you use best practices of GLASSVASE. Greet those students at the door, listen to understand, acknowledge when you're wrong, acknowledge every student in the room, smile, make things student-centered with student voice and student choice, where they can see themselves in their classroom. Make sure everyone feels valued. Find that time during class to make students value one another. Make that area in your class where they value one another. Make sure everyone feels accepted just as they are. They do not need to change. They are great just as they are. And then set them up for success. You remember how frustrating it was when you drew your own house and you did such a great job, and then it earned an F because there wasn't teacher clarity explaining the rubric. How much better would it be if you got to go back now with a rubric or with a model of what my expectation was? Then it wouldn't be as frustrating. That's what we owe that to our students. And creating that environment where students feel safe, physically safe, virtually safe, and emotionally safe. Everything that I talked about today, there are links to everything online. Here's where I bought the different things on Amazon and how I created what I showed you, including that big tree. and all the different references that I referenced throughout. These are where those books came from. So that concludes our presentation, and I'm sorry that you weren't able to join us in the live version of it, but I hope that you benefited from this. So I really would like some feedback from you. If you could please take your phone and answer this very short, quick feedback survey on whether or not, or on how I can do a better job with my presentation. Thank you very much. Aloha.